I've heard people say that cops have a thankless job. That's really not true. Lots of people support the police. There are TV shows about cops who are heroes. Even like the TSA at the airport, I think we all find it annoying and kind of rude. But at the same time, it's like, we do need security at the airport. So that's fine. Even like the IRS, as much as people grumble about paying taxes, it's like, look, fair is fair. Those people are just doing their jobs. ICE agents have the most thankless job in the US government. People hate them in a way that's deeper than they hate those other people. It's deep moral hatred and condemnation. I would argue that this hatred is justified, but even if you disagree with me, I think we can all acknowledge that these people have a very, very bad job. ICE agents have to wear masks at work just so they don't get doxxed, just so people don't know who they are and can't follow them and harass them. They have to do their job in secret. Think, cops don't wear masks. As much as people protest the police or whatever, it's like, no, cops can still walk around with their face showing. TSA agents can just clock out at the end of the day and go home, and no one's following them. Even NFL referees, they have millions of people who hate their guts. But after the game, they can get in their car and go home. They don't have to worry about reprisal. ICE is probably below parking enforcement in the public eye. People hate parking cops, but you're never going to see a protest to abolish parking enforcement. What's interesting about ICE is that they do have public support in the sense that Trump ran on mass deportations. But the places that ICE has to operate, the places that have ICE raids, those aren't the places that Trump won. So ICE has to operate in communities where they're actively not wanted, where people will get together and protest their presence and tell them to leave. The only places that support ICE, the only places you see public support for immigration enforcement is like online, in online comments. But ICE doesn't work online. It's an in-person job. So every day they have to go to work and face constant disapproval from the public who they're supposed to be serving. In Mexico, the law enforcement does wear masks when they're dealing with, they're fighting the drug cartels. That's just so, the drug cartels can't follow their family and, threaten them or take hostages or something. But the difference is that those cops in Mexico have the moral support of the public who they're serving. They're not harassed in public and told to leave. ICE kind of operates under it's the same feeling that you'd see in Russia or China with kind of a secret police force. But we don't live in Russia or China. The difference between those countries and America is that Russia and China are basically totalitarian entities. They have full control of public speech and public gathering. In America, the government doesn't have that kind of control. People can just say whatever they want. People aren't worried about, reprisal. Nobody in Russia or China is going to follow around the cops and film them on their phone. People in America will do that all day long and post it on social media because that's what we feel like doing. People in America will go out of their way. You could be on your way to do something important. If you see an ICE raid happening, you are going to stop and boo them. During the pandemic, we made this big deal about essential workers, nurses and doctors and grocery store workers. It felt a little forced. We were all clapping for nurses every day or something, but the message was there. We thank you for showing up to do your job. We thank you for showing up and sacrificing yourself to help others. ICE is like an inversion of that. They show up to work and people actively show up and tell them to leave. We don't want you here and we want you out of the community. And we will get everybody together. Even our local government doesn't want you here. That's how badly people don't like you. You're not responding to emergency. You are the emergency. You are the reason people are showing up and booing you. And it's like that every day. The real question to ask here is, how long can this last? Because these are humans that we're talking about. These are people who at some point have to clock out and go home, probably to their families or wherever. And they have to carry that weight in their head. Nobody likes being hated. Some people, it's like you watch sports, you play an away game, you deal with a little bit of booing. And, maybe you thrive in it for a little while. But it's not like that every day. Eventually, you do get to play a home game in sports. ICE doesn't get home games. They get hated every single day. Even Donald Trump, he doesn't have the heart to show up in a place that's not going to be friendly to him. He's only going to show up to make a speech in front of supporters. He cannot deal with being booed because people can't deal with being booed. It's intense and it gets into your head. No one's really talked about it yet, but I really think that these ICE agents have to be dealing with a level of mental degradation and like depression and anxiety that it's not sustainable. At some point, they're going to end up going down the path of, addiction and self-harm. Just because, look, maybe they signed up for some sort of sense of moral duty, but that is not all-encompassing. At some point, it's going to wear you down, and you won't be able to keep going. Normally, I don't think public outrage really does a whole lot. I think it's usually more like catharsis for people to express themselves. But I think this case is actually different. I think if the level of public protest and outrage keeps up at this level, ICE is going to crack. They're going to break down from the inside and people are going to start quitting. And it's going to be harder and harder to find people to replace them. The job market is not great, but it's not that bad. If you want to serve your country, you can find another way to serve your country. If you want to work in law enforcement, I'm sure there is a better job you can find that probably pays just as well, that you don't have to wear a mask to work and worry that somebody is going to follow you and write down your license plate number. I think the best historical parallel to what's happening now with ICE is probably like American soldiers coming home from Vietnam. Because especially later in the war, soldiers who were coming home from Vietnam, they weren't met with like military parades. People were like spitting on them. It was complete condemnation and protests. Because that war was fought for political purposes. There was no real moral justification for it. And the soldiers knew this too. American soldiers got to Vietnam and they realized they weren't fighting an army. They were fighting people in their homes. They were occupying a place where they weren't wanted and a place that was glad when they left. And that is what ICE is going through right now. Because they're not fighting criminals. They are separating families. They're taking parents away from kids. And for what? Just like in Vietnam, there's no real goal here. You're never going to know when you've reached a victory because there is no clear defined goal. Trump is just sending them around to harass people. They know they're not going to get every undocumented immigrant out of the country. Even Trump has already walked most of that back because he realized it was an unreasonable goal. No, most of these people are law-abiding, working people who are actually needed in this country. One of the big turning points in the Vietnam War was the protests at Kent State in Ohio. Big college protest against the war in Vietnam. The National Guard was sent in, sounds familiar, and 5 students were shot and killed. And that was the moment when the Vietnam War lost broad support in the public eye. And from that point on, it was just a matter of time before things wound to a close, because public outrage reached a point where there was just not enough energy to keep it going. And I think that is where things are going to go with the current immigration situation. It's not going to end in victory or defeat. It's just going to end because nobody wants to do it anymore.